Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mill Creek Township School District's School Board Candidate Forums, which is sponsored by the Erie County Council PTA and the Erie chapter of the League of Women Voters. I'm Bonnie Fagan. I'm the legislative chair for the Erie County Council, and I've also been a volunteer member of the Pennsylvania PTA State Board of Managers for 10 years. Just in the way of information, Erie County Council PTA is actually a group of 14 PTAs that exist in Erie County from 3 school districts, and they work collaboratively on child advocacy issues and improving education for all students in not only Erie County, but in Pennsylvania. I also want to thank the candidates for joining us tonight, and I want to thank all the community members that have joined us. And I'd also like to thank CAM Erie, which is offering this forum for us, and they've been wonderful to work with. We're going to be conducting this forum according to the National PTA's Candidate Forum Guidelines. National PTA is the country's oldest child advocacy group, and conducting forums like this is a prime focus for PTAs, which people may not realize. The way the forum will be conducted is each candidate will have a brief introduction, and then we will start with the questions. The questions will be visible on the screen along with the countdown timer. I will read the question for the first person who will answer it, and I can repeat it for any candidates that might need it repeated as they each take a turn. There will be a rotation, so each candidate takes a turn at answering questions first, and the candidates did not receive their questions in advance, so they are seeing them for the first time tonight along with all of you. We are keeping all the attendees' cameras and microphones turned off, but the session is being recorded, and it will be broadcast several times by CAM Erie before the primary on May 18th. And a link will be available hopefully by tomorrow or Thursday that will be shared on the CAM Erie website, on the Erie County Council PTA Facebook page. And I forgot to mention that the forum is also being co-sponsored by the Erie chapter of the League of Women Voters. And they will be sharing the link on their website as well. So with that, we will start by introducing or having each candidate take a chance to introduce themselves, starting with Christopher Busco. And we'll have each of you can unmute yourself. The candidates can when you go to talk. And if you don't unmute yourself, I'll remind you. Chris Busco.
Yes, thank you very much, Bonnie. And I'd like to start off by saying thank you to the PTA for putting this on, going through all this work, and all those in attendance. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Christopher Busco, and I'm seeking your support for re-election in the Mill Creek School Board. I've been on the board for 6 years, and in that time, I've been on Personnel Committee and aided other board members as needed. This year, I am the board vice president and on the Personnel Committee. I have been a lifelong member of Mill Creek Township, married for 29 years with 3 boys. They all attended McDowell and Westlake. After attending K through 12, I graduated, went to Gannon, got a BS in chemistry, started working in the chemical industry for a few years, and then about 3 years after, I started my own company. In that time, that's what I bring to the board. 3 years, after the 3 years of working in the private industry, I started my own. With that, I bring the dealings with negotiating pricing with large companies, Siemens, dealing with payroll issues, banking issues. The biggest thing business owners do understand is cash flow, how it works, payroll. And I don't speak for everybody on the board. I am just an individual, but this last year was very difficult for everybody. And what the board has stood out doing is we brought Dr. Ian Roberts on board in a very difficult time. And what he brings to our board, into our district, will take us to the next level and take us into the top 10 of the Pennsylvania high schools and school districts. He will aid all the kids to reach their fullest potential. So again, I please ask for your support, continued support, and so we can keep this board moving forward with Dr. Roberts. And I'd like to say, next. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next candidate is Janice Philbeck. Janice, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, here we go. I would like to say thank you to everyone for being in attendance tonight. Thank you to the Erie County Council PTA. Bonnie, thank you for moderating and organizing. And I'd also like to say thank you to the League of Women Voters and CAM Erie. I'm Janice Philbeck, and I am running for the school board because I know I will bring the skills, experience, and education necessary to the job to be a part of the team to bring Mill Creek schools to the next level, so we all not only just survive, but thrive in a post-COVID world. I'm a people-focused visionary, a listener, and a problem solver. I want to contribute to and live in a vibrant community with strong schools, because we all know that school systems in any community is the barometer of the community. By knocking on doors, my team and I have reached over 1,800 voters, and the most frequently heard comment is, "We need educators on the board. Thank you for running." I have lived in Mill Creek for 15 years after moving here with my husband, Greg, who holds an endowed professorship in finance and is currently the director of the Black School of Business at Penn State Barron. We have 3 sons, 2 of which have graduated from Barron. Our oldest, Aaron, also with an advanced degree in finance, lives in Philadelphia with his wife, Andrea, a law student. Kyle, a digital project manager who works in Manhattan. And our youngest son, Grant, will graduate in August with a degree in communication and minor in history. Currently, I am a part-time lecturer at Penn State Barron in the English department, where I have been elected by my peers to the faculty council 3 times. I'm proud to be an educator with 15 years classroom experience. 5 of those years were spent right here in Mill Creek Township at Bell Valley Elementary, where I taught as a Title I reading specialist and a 3rd grade classroom teacher. During my years at Bell Valley, I completed my 2nd master's degree in reading and earned my reading specialist certification. During those years, I also achieved a national board certificate in literacy and early and middle childhood. In addition, I hold a certificate in teaching English as a second language. While teaching in Mill Creek, I served as the 3rd grade literacy and math chairperson for 3 of those 5 years. I consider myself to be a childrenist. Protecting, guiding, teaching, and advocating for children has been the focus of my life. I'm an excellent listener, I'm curious, I'm innovative, trustworthy, and dedicated to enriching the lives of children around me. It is with these qualities that I will bring value to the board.
Thank you, Janice. The next candidate is Mike Kabelka.
Good evening, Bonnie and fellow candidates and everybody that's watching this evening. Thank you again for putting this together. I am Mike Kabelka. I am a lifelong resident of Mill Creek Township, homeowner, and I graduated from McDowell High School in 1980, along with Erie County Voc Tech. I was able to get employed during my senior year of high school at WJET-TV without any college. I worked for JET for 30 years. I am now at WICU and WSEE. I'm the chief engineer here for the past 10 years. I served on the board for 2 terms, 8 years. I've been off for 4. I was the only board member out of the existing members that voted against building a new McDowell. They were hell-bent on doing that, but I went against it. And when it all imploded, we did not build a new McDowell. So I hang my hat on that. My main concern is for the taxpayers, which I am. I'm going to be 59 years old in a month, and I understand what it's like for our retired people, especially. We can't just continue to have our taxes increased. That ends up being a real problem. So I understand how the board works. I've been on it, and I would ask that you would consider putting me back on. 4 years ago, I lost by only a few hundred votes in 5th place. So when you get to the polls here on May 18th, please look for Mike Kabelka and give me a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The next candidate is Janine Mattern.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thank you, everyone, for putting this on tonight. I appreciate it. My name's Janine Mattern. I'm a wife, a mother of 2. My daughter is a 2018 graduate of McDowell. My son, Christian, is currently a sophomore at McDowell. I work full-time as a personal lines administrative assistant at the Laisel Schaff Insurance Company. And while most of you may know me as the administrator of the We Are Mill Creek Facebook page for almost the past 8 years or so, My time being active in the district goes back farther, and it's given me many wonderful opportunities to be involved and educate myself on a wide array of past and current issues and all of our district programming. I'm a past PTA member. I was part of the Citizens Advisory Committee from 13 to 17. I am a participant in the Professional Educator Plan Review Committee back from October of 13. I was a past vice chairwoman of the Mill Creek Education Foundation, where I still continue to fundraise. I'm involved in many ways with my son's athletics. I was when my daughter was with the CPA program at McDowell. So as you can hear, I've had a collective engagement with our district for many years. I've attended almost every board meeting since 2012 to stay abreast of all of the issues the district has faced and will continue to face. I'm approachable, I'm a hard worker, I'm student-centric, and if elected, I want to continue to engage our students, our staff, our community, so we can bring about positive, effective change, not only within our 10 schools, but with our community as a whole. So I would appreciate your support on May 18th. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. The next candidate is Sally Newsham.
Hi, Bonnie. I wanted to thank you for putting this all together. I think we all really appreciate that. My name is Sally Newsham, and I'm running for the Mill Creek School Board. A little bit about my family. I've been married to my husband, Rob. It'll be 38 years in July. We have one son, Sean, who's 33, and I have a brand new daughter-in-law. We just celebrated this weekend, Allie, who is also a Mill Creek teacher. Rob is a McDowell graduate of 1979, Sean 2006, and Allie 2008. My educational background, I graduated from Penn State with a dual certification in special ed and elementary ed, and then I went on to get postgraduate credits at Gannon in the area of counseling. I retired in June of 2020 after 39 years of teaching, 34 of which were in the Mill Creek School District. My teaching career started at Harbor Creek Youth Services. I worked at an intensive treatment unit for court-placed juvenile delinquents for 5 years. In 1986, I went to Westlake and started my career in Mill Creek. Westlake, I started the learning support program there. At that time, all the special ed students went to J.S. Wilson. In 1993, when Walnut Creek opened, I transferred up there my first year in learning support, and then I taught 26 years in 6th grade math. I believe in giving back to the community. I'm a volunteer at the Caring Place. I've volunteered there for 13 years. And my family and I were also billets for the Erie Otters. We had for 11 years different hockey players living with us, and we supported them and loved them. What I bring to the board is my educational background and my knowledge of where Mill Creek has been and where they are now. And I'd love to be a part of where they're going to give back in a different capacity. My husband is not retired and he'd like to put me back to work. So vote for Sally. Thanks.
Thanks, Sally. The next candidate is Blaine Padalon.
Hi, Bonnie. I want to say thank you for extending your invitation to me so late. I didn't know this was going on, but I'm really thankful, and I can only imagine how much went into organizing with your level of depth with 7 people. A little bit about myself. I have been in Mill Creek academically most of my life. I am currently a senior at McDowell. Save a few years I spent at Collegiate Academy. One of those years I was on the dean's list and also was elected to the student senate. So I'm trying to climb up the ladder into the real deal. All of my family, my mother, my father, my sister, all of my extended relatives have grown up in Mill Creek. And in fact, my mother, father, and sister had Mrs. Newsham. I don't know if you remember, Bailey Mato was my sister. And in addition, academically, I suffer from ADHD. With that being said, I think that it's important that mental health, mental disabilities, and physical disabilities are treated tenderly and are given a little bit more attention in our schools, and especially in younger students, which I think is absolutely the most important thing that should be treated going forward into the future, because it's something that I've struggled with and something I feel that our schools could maybe give to students not as a disability, but as a strength. So, thank you.
Thanks, Blaine. The last candidate is Gary Winchell.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks for everyone putting this forum together. And my name is Gary Winchell, and I'm seeking re-election to the Mill Creek School Board on the ballot for both the 4-year and a 2-year seat. I have served the past 3 years on the board as chairman of the Finance and Operations Committee and currently serve as the president of the board. I had previously served on the board from the years 2000 through 2010. I've been a resident of Mill Creek and married to Shirley Olajeri Winchell for 29 years. She's a retired Mill Creek teacher at Mill Creek School, Walnut Creek Middle School Math. We have one son, Austin, who's economics statistics grad from Pitt, Mercyhurst grad data science, and now works at Erie Insurance. So we're happy to have him fully employed and in Erie. In service to in the community, I also serve on the boards of the Ronald McDonald's House Charities and also on the investment committee for the Sisters of St. Joseph. Regarding my education and career, I have a BS in finance and economics from Gannon University. Been a certified financial planner since 1990. I worked at PNC Financial Services as a senior vice president for PNC Investments for 33 years, retiring in 2016. I currently serve in the role of a wealth coach with Freedom Investment Management Group, specializing in financial planning. I bring these qualifications and experience to the board in the area of fiscal responsibility and planning. In addition, being married to an educator for the past 29 years has helped me gain some insight and understanding of what happens in a classroom. You can imagine the conversations that we've had during that time about education, educational programming, and how to fund both. Last year, we hired Dr. Roberts, dynamic new superintendent who is less than a year, has started a transformation in our district. 1 year working with him is not enough. I'm running for another 4-year term to continue making a difference. I want to make the difference and make Mill Creek Township School District a top tier school district, both in a region and a state. Imagine the possibilities. I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. In the way of housekeeping, I should have said at the beginning that each candidate will have a 2-minute period to not only introduce him or herself, but now also as we start the questions, there will be a 2-minute period. We're not going to turn people's microphones off, and everyone did a fairly good job, but if we start, having any candidates, extending far past the 2-minute mark, I will ask you to wrap up your comments. So now moving to the first question, which is going to be for Mrs. Philbeck. The question is, briefly describe your thoughts about schools returning to full-time in-school education and your plans for accomplishing that.
So absolutely, being in school full-time is, I think, the ultimate goal. And I think it's very necessary, especially as Blaine mentioned, for the mental health of our students and also for the academic learning of our students. I think most people do learn in person in a better way. It's because we're human beings, right? And when we teach and when we learn, it's all about the relationship being built. And that is an element you just can't reach through a camera to the students. I did teach on Zoom at Penn State. And so I understand the struggle that the teachers have been through and the students, because teaching 18 and 19-year-olds, they're able to tell me exactly what it is they need and where they're struggling. So a plan for that would be to do it safely. I think that the district has done a good job contact tracing, and I would assume that that would continue to be tracking data to make sure that our students and our teachers are safe. And I think that we need to be vigilant on the virus. The virus is a novice virus. It's new. We're still learning about it. And we've learned a lot in the last several years or several months and a year. So I would assume that that learning would continue to take place. I think that we look at communication, having really strong communication between the schools, the families, the board, the teachers, the administrators. And I wonder how it would be to maintain some sort of virtual connection for students if we are still quarantining when the fall arrives, when the winter comes, to be using virtual technology to keep students in touch with class, with a full return to school. And then I also think, like, on a tangent there, that maybe snow days are a thing of the past. If we can take the best of what we learned, not that we have too many snow days in Erie, but we can take the best of what we learned from our time in COVID with technology and move that forward.
Thank you. Mr. Kabelka, do you need me to reread the question?
No, I'm good, Bonnie. I 100% support the students being back in the classroom as soon as possible. You really don't get a good education remotely. It's better than not having anything, but it's not ideal. We weren't in very good shape for technology in Mill Creek over the years. We did not have a 1-to-1 ratio for computers. I hope that they were able to get one now. You know, it's a struggle, and it's a struggle for parents to have their children at home because they've got jobs to do. Some of them were lucky enough to be able to work from home, and others weren't. I just saw that very recently Governor Wolf opened up some things, so it looks like our students are going to be able to have their graduation in person. I noticed that some of the colleges over the weekend were able to do that. I think everybody is really looking forward to getting back to normal. I think there's, you know, big concerns throughout, you know, the United States about businesses closing due to this and everything else. So I'm 100% for getting the students back sooner than later. And as they had mentioned, we certainly could use the Zoom and the 1-to-1 computers to get in on a snow day or anything that we need to do like that. But I really think that we need to be back and much sooner than later. And I hope that we get to the herd immunity quickly, because we just need to be past this COVID. I, for one, have had more than enough of it.
Thank you, Mr. Kabelka. Next, we'll hear from Mrs. Mattern.
Hi, Bonnie. Can you repeat the question, Bonnie?
Yes. Briefly describe your thoughts about schools returning to full-time in-school education and your plans for accomplishing that.
Well, as far as the plans go, I think we always have to look at, just like during this, you have to look at what is allowable under the governor's guidelines, PDE guidelines, and the CDC guidelines. I'm confident we're going to have a full 5-day return. As the district did this year, they did apply for flexible instruction days. So as you'll see on the school calendar for next year, election day being one of them, will be a virtual day for students, just like this coming Tuesday for election day. So the snow day thing in the past, they did apply and were approved for flexible instruction days. What remains to be seen is what that might look like for a student in the course of their school day. You know, will they still be required to wear a mask? Will there still be 3 to 6 foot spacing? What will lunch look like? Those are the things that I'm anxious to hear about, what the normalcy will start to look like. And I believe that we're getting there. I mean, with the vaccines, and now again, I think Thursday is when it's allowable for the 12 to 15-year-olds to have the vaccine. So I think we're on a good course. Of course, students have to be back in the classroom, 100%.
Thank you. The next candidate to answer is Mrs. Newsham.
Yes, I definitely support the kids going back to school 5 days a week, and I foresee that that's going to happen in the fall. Virtual, I can talk from a teacher point of view. From doing the virtual, I just felt like I couldn't reach the kids and do everything with them I normally could. In the classroom, perhaps you present your lesson and then there's a lot of conversation that happens. And I know a lot of times a student will ask a question and then another one will say, oh yeah, I had that question too. Sometimes the kids will explain how things are done, and sometimes just hearing it from another person is very helpful. And you miss out on all of that during the virtual learning. I do think it was also extremely difficult for the parents working and having kids at home, trying to get things done with them. Hands-on activities. I could speak again from the math point of view. Usually I present the lesson and then we do an activity and we work together and we do that. And a lot of those activities were not possible in the virtual learning. So definitely getting them back to school 5 days a week would be a huge goal.
Thank you. Blaine Padalon.
Thanks. So the belief I've had with COVID, especially as time goes on, is that it's kind of a to each their own thing. Some people are more than confident, happy, and comfortable at this point going to the movie theater, to the buffet, restaurants, places out in the world. Other people are still petrified to go to the grocery store once a week while wearing 2 masks. I am in full support of a 100% return to school 5 days a week as normal as absolutely possible. However, I think that there should be an option for parents to opt for virtual learning instead of 5 days a week. I think it would be relatively rare because even now, my classmates that are full-time virtual are somewhat far and few between, which I think will really be exaggerated next year. So some people are especially still concerned with the unknowingness behind the vaccine still, with having their children go to school. Maybe that parent is very anxious about COVID, or there's an older relative that lives with them that is also anxious about COVID. So I think all students should be assumed default back to school 5 days a week. And kind of like we did this year, there should be the parent option to opt for virtual learning, should they believe it's a better option for them and their family and their children. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Winchell?
Yeah, if you recall, I still remember sitting at this table January 3rd on a Sunday having a board meeting. And, you know, we're the first district of our size in our region and as part of the state to send our kids back 4 days a week. And we did it safely. And we did that through a number of our support staff, pandemic coordinator, pandemic team, you know, while providing a choice. While providing a choice to the parents. Each family situation is a little different. Each family had to make that decision what best served them. So that's the role of the board, to provide choices for our stakeholders, all of our stakeholders. And Mike, you know, referring to your question, you know, some of the money that we spent helping them get back to school 4 days a week. You know, we did buy iPads, Chromebooks. The foundation helped out with hotspots, desk cameras, smart boards. We added additional staff to the middle school. We had virtual delivery at the high school. You know, we're doing a lot of the custodians, you know, worked hard and diligently sanitizing and wipes and sprays and dust shields and distancing. So, you know, it was a commitment that we knew that data told us that it was best to be back in school. We want to provide that choice. However, going forward, that's going to be a big part of, you know, how we do academics. We know that virtual is not the ideal delivery. And in some situations, it even challenges our academic credibility. So in our elementary, we're seeing about 10 to 12%, but in our high school, we're seeing 25 to 30% of our kids are staying virtual. So, you know, we need to provide a product. What does that look like in the future? Is it we have a cyber program? Is it Kaola, or is it a hybrid of something like that? But we're working very hard to get back in school 5 days. And again, we were the first district to come back and did it safely and providing a choice to our parents. Thank you.
And Mr. Busco?
Yes. Basically, the COVID, coming back from COVID, whether you were working, student, teacher, custodian, it was difficult for everybody. And again, as Gary says, we were the first district our size to be back safely. We've been running vaccine clinics to aid our teachers or students that want to get the shot. We've done a lot of different things. We've, you know, besides the cleaning, the maintenance, we've addressed other issues. So one of the biggest things is the guidelines do change weekly from the state, from our, you know, stakeholders. We do get changes. So going forward, we are in the process of looking at the start of next year and all that. But again, everything comes down to being as safe as possible. And what does that look like? And, you know, right now being back in school is very important for the kids' mental health, for everybody involved, for the fact about food, you know, breakfast, lunches, all that good stuff. That is all important factors that play into it, and we need to get the kids back. And we've been working at that very diligently. And again, we're not sure what it's going to look like in the fall, but let's hope masks, 6 foot, 3 foot is gone. Let's get back to just normal, but we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our next question. This will start with Mr. Kabelka. The question is, the administration has proposed a $104 million budget for 2021-22, which includes at least a 1.8% increase in taxes. Explain if you support or oppose that proposed budget and why. Mr. Kabelka?
Thank you, Bonnie. I definitely oppose it. The budget seems to go up, 4 or 5% a year. And when you're at $100 million budget, 4% is $4 million. This year we did get 9 million, which I understand, had to be used for certain things. I did see that it could be used for technology, buying some computers and such. So I understand why they didn't put that in the budget. But I know that we had a pretty big fund balance before, and I know we're using a little bit of it to erase the increase, but I would rather see a no tax increase 2 years in a row, which I don't think has happened for many, many, many years. I do applaud them for not raising the taxes last year, but things are still pretty tough, and they're going to get tougher once the unemployment goes away. And, the people that have been getting the extra money and such, once that runs out, times are going to get really tough. And what I'm really always been worried about is the seniors, because other people, their taxes are escrowed. They pay, $800 mortgage, and they maybe pay another $100 per month in their taxes. But probably a lot more than that, actually, probably $200 a month if your average bill is $2,400. But seniors have paid their houses off, and they're trying to live on a limited budget, and then they have to come up with this money, the extra money. And you might say, oh, it's only $50 on 100,000, but then your average house in Mill Creek is probably closer to 200,000. Now it's $100, and that's money that they don't really have. So I would like to have seen them sharpen their pencil a little bit harder, a little bit sharper, and then use fund balance to make it up, because it was really like $1.5 million out. I think it's somewhere in that ballpark. So that certainly could have been covered by fund balance, and I would have rather voted to use the fund balance and have a no increase for the second year.
Thank you. Mrs. Mattern, do you need the question reread? Your takeoff move.
Yes, sorry, Bonnie. Yes, please. Can you read it?
I can. The administration has proposed a $104 million budget for 2021-22, which includes at least a 1.8% increase in taxes. Explain if you support or oppose that proposed budget and why.
Well, first, according to Monday's meeting, and Gary and Chris, you can verify this for me if I'm a little off on the numbers, but I think it was proposed at 107 plus, with only a 1.2% tax increase. So Gary or Chris, if can verify if I'm right on my numbers there, according to Monday's meeting. As far as if it's needed, I didn't sit and drill down into the budget. I tend to lean that maybe this year is not the year. Too many people, businesses closed. I understand grants for businesses, and I understand stimulus money. I think with the 9 million nesters, and I think with drilling down and maybe pausing on some hiring, that maybe just not this year for the tax increase. But again, I would really want to sit and drill down into the budget and see what, I'm not privy to what was discussed on how they even got down to the 1.2. You could, could they go back to the table? Chris and Gary will tell you, they can go back to the table and ask Mr. O'Toole, hey, what does it look like if we only go to a 0.5% tax increase? I'd like to see a lot of different scenarios. And that's one of the hardest things when you're a board member. You have to ask so many questions, and you have to look at everything, because if you're not taking a bite out of the elephant, so to speak, a little at a time, eventually it's a huge tax increase. Eventually then you're talking about going above the index. And that's never good. So I guess if I would say that I would want more information on what does it look like if we go a little deeper into the fund balance, still with a smaller tax increase, but could maybe we not do a tax increase at all? Discontinue things that are not a direct service to our students. Again, there's a lot of information needed to make a solid determination, but I just don't think this year is the year.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Newsham?
I don't think there's anyone out there that would say, yes, I want to pay more taxes. Unfortunately, I believe about 93% of the school budget is fixed every year. Those are costs that can't be worked with. I know from my middle school experience that because of TAC, we didn't want to raise taxes. We cut a guidance counselor in the middle schools while I was there. Because of taxes, we cut an instructional support teacher while I was there. Because of not wanting to raise taxes, we cut a reading specialist when I was there. And I think we've cut so much. In middle school, again, that's my area of focus. Students go from elementary to middle school. That's a huge step for them. And unfortunately, we've not wanted to raise our taxes. And so we've cut a lot of support services for students in the middle school. So I think they started, if I remember, and I have not gone through the budget line by line either, but I think they started with like 3.6% and they got it down to 1.5% or 1.8%. Using the general fund to balance the budget sounds great, but I know about 10 or 15 years ago, our district was in a lot of trouble because that general fund was depleted. And so that's concerning to me. I think we could do a better job also. I think the real problem lies with the state and the federal reimbursement. The state only reimburses us 13% and the federal government 2%. The real estate taxes that we collect account for 53%. So that's very sad. And I think we need to do a better job of petitioning the state and the federal governments for that. And I wanted to end with Blaine. Yes, I do remember you, and I remember your sister Bailey, and I hope she's doing well. Thanks.
Thank you. And now we'll have Mr. Patalon answer the question. Did you need me to repeat it?
No, I'm good.
On the screen?
Thank you. So I don't really support raising taxes. First of all, because Joe Biden cut us a pretty decent check, which is, I understand is pretty rare. And I understand a lot of that money is earmarked. However, that combined with, to synthesize what Janine and Mike said, or excuse me, what Janine said, there is a lot of extra money already in the budget. So I think that maybe other avenues should be explored before we go to a tax increase. And again, like what Mike said, in addition, we're essentially in a honeymoon phase with COVID. Economists think that it'll take 10 years at least to get to where we were before with COVID. So I think we need to really be careful with how we tax people in our district, because right now they play the music on the commercials, we're all in this together and it's all cute and everybody holds hands, but it's gonna get really rough really soon, I think. And I think that a tax increase is the last thing anybody needs in order to survive, to keep their homes, to stay afloat during a pandemic. And again, really, I really think that there are wider avenues that can be explored than a tax increase. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winchell?
Okay, so no one likes raising taxes. Anyone that says, I will not raise taxes for the next 4 or 5 years if I'm elected for 4 or 5 years. Other people say, we got to raise taxes each and every year. It's a balancing act each and every year. Janine, our budget was 104. It was raised to 107 because $3 million of ESSER funds were put in, money will be taken out. Okay. Last year, we did not raise taxes. It's 1.8%. We started at 3.6%. There was some movement of debt service that saved us $1 million. And Mike, the fund balance by board policy, it's 8%. That has been in place since the financial difficulties years ago. So by board policy, we have to keep it at 8%. Yeah, we can change the policy, but right now it's at 8%. So our school district is the foundation of the community. It's a driving influence of attracting new families to Mill Creek. When someone comes into our community, they say, where do you want, where should we live, right? So it's the single most important factor in maintaining and increasing property values for all of our residents' homes, including senior citizens. 4 pieces of commentary here I'd like to say. We cannot continue to cut away programs to balance a budget. Otherwise, we compromise the academic integrity of our school district. With that said, a delicate balancing act, evaluating programs with a data-driven approach being the anchor, followed up by student impact, and then results being analyzed, the return on our investment is a critical process that must be followed to evaluate the viability of our programs. We must continually look at cutting operational costs. We've done that through utilities, workman's comp and liability insurance, but the big one, charter school costs, 3.7 million. We need to get those kids back. We must continue to look for additional funding and revenue opportunities, be diligent on property assessment process, work to create additional payment in lieu of tax agreements. We must expand our outreach to the PA-based companies to take advantage of the PA tax credit program to help put PA tax dollars to our school district. I do want to commend the business office with Aaron O'Toole, who's leading the way and has structured a 5-year budget forecast. Decisions made today will have an impact on the budget for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And this 5-year forecast can show the impact of the dollars spent or not spent today. Businesses don't plan to fail, but fail to plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Busco?
Yes. You know, it's easy to be one person and say no for tax increases, or 2, and that's fine. But the biggest thing to understand is that our district, again, as was mentioned before, 10% of our budget is what we control. The rest are earmarks or fixed costs that we cannot deal with. Okay. And Aaron has shown us many different spreadsheets on different tax increases. The failure to increase taxes, say for 2-3 years, he has shown us a couple different scenarios and what that leads to. And the potential is not always good because we constantly we have constant expenses. Everything goes up just like everybody else's water, electric are increased. And one of the things that was brought up is taxes. How do, you know, and Aaron has presented this a few times, is the state thinks of us as a rich district. So they tell us that the way we get our money is from our local taxes. Fair or not fair, that's what the state comes out at. And, you know, again, talk to your state legislators if you think it's unfair. But that's how the funding formula works from the state. And unfortunately, it does come down. I own multiple properties in the district. No one's happy about tax increases. But as Gary said, rising tide lifts all ships. Your taxes might go up, but the value of your house has gone up considerably in the past year, 2 years, even with COVID. A house across the street sold for $40,000 more than it was appraised at. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Philbeck? Unmute yourself.
Thank you. So no one likes to raise taxes, and I would never want to raise taxes every year. I am in support of raising taxes in this particular case, only because I have the costs are rising everywhere. And I have been on the faculty when we have emergency faculty meetings to come together, to go to our classroom, to meet as a team, to cut our costs. And we make a list and we're told that we have so much of a stipend to spend on materials for our classrooms. And what ends up happening is in situations like this is we're told that we can't make as many copies, or we have to cut our supply list for the beginning of the year. And so the teachers end up buying the materials that the students need. Positions get cut throughout the school that we need. And so we're kind of at a turning point, a transformative time where we are coming out of this COVID, and we need to thrive, not just survive. We need to jump out of this and jump ahead and put all the resources that we can into educating the children. And so in this case, I would be in favor of a tax increase.
Thank you. Moving to question number 3, which will start with Mrs. Mattern. The question is, The district expects to receive $9.4 million in federal COVID relief funds. What do you want to see those funds spent on?
I could put it under one heading, direct services to our students. More school counselors, more school psychologists, more mental health specialists. It was actually mentioned at Monday night's board meeting by Mr. Ninetempt, head of pupil services, that the American Counselor Association stipulates 1 to 250, one school counselor to 250 students. Our largest elementary school, Tracy Elementary, has roughly, I think, roughly under 600 students, one school counselor. Now we're talking about those students coming back to a possible 5-day return, and every student's coming back at a different place. And when I mean a different place, they're going to be in a different place mentally, and they're going to be in a different place at, in curriculum in their education. We have one school counselor at that building. We have one school counselor at every elementary school. We have 3 school counselors at our high school. MIHS, there's 3 there. At McDowell, there's 3 there. 60% of their time they spend as a test proctor, either with ACT, SAT, Keystones. Now you're talking about students who are making college plans. I don't know how many times we've heard the data about how anxiety is high in our student population across the nation. You have suicide as the #1 reason students are leaving this earth. So I would love to see a lot of that ESSER money going towards direct student services, counselors, mental health professionals, school psychologists. I think that would take a big chunk out of $9 million.
Thank you. Mrs. Newsham, do you need the question?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you. I agree with Janine, and that's where I think a majority of the money should be spent. I was thrilled to hear that last night they are putting in 10 interventionalists, which I believe are like the IST teachers that they used to have in middle schools and they don't anymore. They've also added some mental health counselors to each building. Throughout the last few years, I saw more and more students with anxiety. And with COVID and everything, I can imagine that it's only way increased since then. We have to provide support for these students. So it's my understanding there's going to be an instructional support teacher now using this money, and there's also going to be mental health specialists. Of course, you have to worry about some safety things too that you're going to have to spend, but they're also going to have to account for loss of learning from COVID. And so I believe that they are doing a summer school program, which is open to everyone, which is wonderful. And they're going to have to look at what things need to be worked on in the different areas, and perhaps some type of after school programs, perhaps maybe more reading specialists or math specialists would be helpful as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Padalon?
So I really agree with what Ms. Mattern and Ms. Newsham said. These funds should be put towards mental health, because myself, being our PC term is neurodivergent, it just means you're differently abled in the head. In elementary school, I went to Asbury maybe from 2010 to about 2013-ish, and I had ADHD pretty bad when I was a kid. There was nobody there, unlike, I believe her name was Mrs. Kennedy at Glenwood during my time there. She was very nice. There was nobody like that at Asbury. I was always somebody else's problem. You know, I got bounced between the classroom I was in to the principal's office, to Mr. MacArthur, and then to Mrs. Fiorenzo, and then back to them. And they call it. There needs to be somebody like a Ms. Kennedy, an emotional support teacher in every building. I had to be sent to another building. I had to leave behind my friends, the social life that I had built brick by brick. I mean, switching schools is like a huge thing for anybody, especially when you're in 4th, 5th grade because of a condition that you're born with. In my opinion, it's on par, and my sister is severely disabled. So I feel like it's a little bit on, like, what if we don't treat physical disabilities the same way? We treat that with like the utmost priority. I think mental health really should be treated the exact same way. So I think that's what a lot of those $9 million funds should be spent on. And also maybe a little bit of that can be spent on trying to balance that budget and prevent tax increases.
Thank you. Mr. Winchell?
Okay, so the ESSER funds, and I know something's going to be posted on our website here in the next day or two. You know, they really can't be used to balance the budget. They can't be used for general operating. They can't be used to stop tax increases. What they need to be used for is, you know, pandemic related, unsustained learning, COVID loss, learning loss, COVID slide. And so during the budget presentation, they're talking, it's in the budget, that $3 million, what Mill Creek will spend it on this year. Last night we approved four mental health therapists, interventionists at every building, summer academy, K through 10 summer academy. We got the summer leadership academy, hiring math and science, English language arts, social studies coordinator, director of alternative education. We talked a lot about virtual. What's that going to be? We're going to drive that. It's a whole new delivery channel. How do we do it? Professional development. Our teachers are crying for professional development. And what are those courses? And we're going to hire a coordinator for that. Curriculum enhancements, IT equipment. What the staff would like, that's input to also. Ed assistants, instructional support, reading specialists, guidance counselors, after-school tutoring, summer programming, technology and training for it. But I just want to remind everyone that those positions that we all want to add, this money sunsets in 3 years. So if we add $9 million of positions, how are we going to fund that in three years? $9 million to the budget, that'd be about a 10% tax increase to keep each, that'd be a 10% tax increase just to keep maintain those. So it's a fine balance. We need to judge the value of the program. We need to see the student impact. We need to see the return on investments in 3 years. We'll be able to get a good handle of that. So the ESSER funds, again, cannot be used to balance the budget, to stop tax increases, and those will sunset in 3 years. But look for the article on our website in the next few days. Thank you.
Mr. Busco?
Yes, thank you. And again, to reiterate that the COVID money is only good for 3 years. And one of the things that the board does when we have to make cuts or look at anything, we have to look at impact of the students first and foremost. Then we take a look at how does it affect the stakeholders in this. So when we look at this in this budget that came out, it was a very difficult budget. Not that any budget is ever easy, but with this money, what can we use to get the most bang for the buck? And our new superintendent has done a great job with, again, looking at the professional development. What do our teachers need? Adding the extra, help at each school with the training for the teachers and for, administration, so we can become that better district and make sure that every child, Dr. Roberts has, he is very well connected and brings a lot of different ideas, not even ideas, they're proven factual, plans to bring up this district. And that brings every student. It's not about high achievers or anything different. It's about all kids. And that's one of the biggest things that this money is going for. We're looking at the best bang for the buck for all kids, all teachers, everyone involved. But again, the COVID money is only good for 3 years, and it can only be spent on certain things. And understand that, as Gary had mentioned, that will be out on the website. There is a link that's been floating around that you can look up and tells you what it's good for and everything. But there'll be a link on the website soon once everything is done with it. But please look for that. And then you get a better understanding of, it's nice to have money, but unfortunately it's earmarked for certain things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Philbeck?
So given that this money is good for 3 years, I would also like to see a lot of it geared towards the mental health processes, mental health support and guidance support in the high schools for training post-graduation, but also in the elementary schools for the mental health suffering. And I'd also like to see a lot of professional development, especially again, we have this time that we're coming out of, we will be in a post-COVID world, or not post-COVID, but like living with COVID in a real way, in the next few years. And I would love to see a lot of professional development geared towards teachers learning how to support students whose English is not their first language. I think that is often overlooked. So I want you to consider during this COVID time about our students that are sitting in Zoom land or sitting in class, twice a week with a live teacher, and how they are struggling and learning. It's a whole new world for them. And I admire them so much coming here and speaking English as their second language, not just their first language, but bringing all sorts of background and experiences forward, and trying to learn English as they try to unlock the knowledge to express to you what it is that they know. And then I would like to look at some one-time expenditures, things that we can use to support students, support instruction. I know there are some technological needs, again, more professional development, and that's how I would like to see it spent.
Thank you. Mr. Kabilka?
I'm glad that Gary and Chris that are on the board right now did explain that this money is only going to be there for 3 years, because the problem is we add bodies, and then people are going to be sad when we don't have the money to fund them and have to cut them in 3 years. Obviously, we do need some more counseling. We need some of the different people, but we got to be careful. We can't spend the majority of that money on payroll, because that's going to be very difficult to sustain. As they talked about, 85–90% of our costs are fixed, and those are basically retirement and payroll. And, when we're negotiating contracts and such, we had negotiated a 10% copay on the insurance, not copay, but, if the monthly cost of the insurance was $1,000, that they were going to pay 10% when I was on, but yet they were going to pay 5% if they participated in a wellness. And I can virtually guarantee you, show me one person that didn't pay 5%, because I don't think that was enforced. But those are the places we've got to cut back a bit on some of the fringe benefits in order to keep that money at check that's for payroll. The best use of this money is going to be, like Janice said, as we use the term in business, CapEx for technology. You buy technology, it might have 5 or 7 year shelf life. And Mill Creek has not been on top of technology. When I was on the board, that was the first place we'd have, $500,000, $750,000, and they'd always kind of cut that, say, well, we can use it elsewhere, but we need to have the most technology that we can have, devices for our students, whether they're Chromebooks or iPads. iPads are more expensive. But the other thing we should look at doing is, there's parents that can't afford, and they get a $300 device and a kid ruins it, what kids do, then they have to pay for it. I think we should be self-insured, and we should offer the parents like a $15 or $20 buy-in, that if they pay that, then something happens to it, that it's covered. If you get 1,000 parents paying $20, then you've got $20,000 to work with, and you're not just nailing, because kids are reckless, and some people can afford it and some can't, but I'd like to not see them get pinned with that entire cost. But we certainly need some more staff. We got to be very careful on how many people we add to that staff, and I'd like to see more technology.
Thank you. We'll be moving to a new question now, and Mrs. Newsham will be the first person to answer it. The question is, from what areas specifically would you recommend budget cuts? Please include your position on funding for academic and extracurricular activities versus athletic programs.
Am I unmuted?
No, you're good. We can,
Oh, okay.
You are unmuted.
Okay, good. I think what you need to look at is, I think you really need to look at the positions that we have now. And I think you really need to examine positions where people aren't 100% of their day, or other than their planning, spending with kids. And I think you need to look and see if you can consolidate some of those positions, switch them around to different positions, so we can keep some of those mental health counselors, some of the people that will provide extra help. Without, again, looking at a detailed line by line budget item, I think that's difficult to say exactly where I would make my cuts. But I think one thing we do need to look at, another idea I did have, and I know a friend of mine used to work at GE, and they would have where the employees would recommend cost savings. How can you save money? And the employees would give them ideas, and anything that was saved, they would get a certain percentage of that for the first year or something. But I think talking to the employees can get you a lot of ideas as well. This is a very small example, but I know years ago, we used to print menus for every student in the district and send them home every month. And I kept saying, why are we doing this? Why don't we print a handful if they want them, or put it online? And that sounds like a small example, but when you add a lot of those things together, it does make a difference. So I think we need to look at, in the district, other ways to do it. It's just a tough situation.
Thank you. Mr. Patalon?
Thank you. So this is a little somewhat what several teachers have actually commented to me about. I think there's a lot of extra funding in our athletics currently. I remember when I was in 7th grade, my ASL team at Walnut Creek with Mr. Krell ranked like number 2 or number 3 in the entire country for middle school ASL, yet we couldn't go to the competition because they wouldn't allow us. Yet there's a lot going on with sports, and more than 2 teachers have made a comment to me. One of them stays in my head. Teacher I had, they were in charge of a group wanted to go somewhere not far, not that expensive, but couldn't. And teachers, she said to me, maybe if we wore helmets and shoulder pads, we'd be able to go. And this, of course, was not a sports activity. So I feel, and I believe a lot of other people feel, parents and faculty feel as though academic programs are maybe less paid attention to than athletics are in the district. So if it came down to we're in it, we need to make cuts somewhere, I would support cutting athletics over academic programs, because honestly, the academic programs in this district are far and few between compared to what I participated in with my time at the Erie School District and with collegiate. So I'm getting myself worked up. I'll mute myself. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Repeat that question, Bonnie, please.
Mr. Winchell, yes. From what areas specifically would you recommend budget cuts? Please include your position on funding for academic and extracurricular activities versus athletic programs.
Okay, so you take a look at the budget, right? So it's expenses, but it's also the revenue, right? So we know we get the revenue from primarily real estate taxes and some state funding, and our expenses is allocated out. But really need to do an assessment. I know Dr. Roberts has a plan to do that of every program to see, again, what is the data driving, what's the data driven results of those programs? So we have classes that have 6, 7 kids in it. Is it really what we're trying to get to? Where's the biggest return on the dollar? Okay. I know that a lot of the sports programs have very active booster programs. I've been involved with them in the past. I know Janine is, and I think that's a big funding thing. But again, we need to continue to look at other funding sources to help us along the way, the PA tax credit. I know that we have private partnerships. Allegheny Health Network is a big sponsor of the Wellness Stronger Together initiative. So we need to continue to look for those outside revenue sources. But as far as the programs, we just need to assess and evaluate every one of those programs to see if it's getting the results that just status quo. And I know that often meets with a lot of resistance when we take a look at this and want to eliminate a program or restructure a program. But we have to think about where we want to be in 1, 3, and 5 years from now. Those academic programs are going to get us to where we want to be and need to be in the future. COVID has changed the dynamic of instructional delivery, and we need to do it more efficiently and more effectively. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Busco?
Yes, thank you again. Like we said before, budget cuts are never easy, and to just say, oh yeah, we're gonna, we're going to change insurance companies. It doesn't work like that. When we cut, remember, we only have 10% of what we can kind of control in the budget. But if we're looking at cutting a program or sports, a lot of the kids get scholarships in sports. A lot of kids get scholarships in other activities that are not sports. Now, looking at, again, you can't just say the line. What we do when we come down to budget time is we take a look, and as Gary had mentioned, Dr. Roberts has a top-down view that he's going through, and this takes time. Everything takes time, and we will have a better understanding of how the district works. But when we do look at specific cuts, we have to weigh those cuts as to how many kids does it affect? What is the outcome of the program? Is it a good program, just not enough kids involved? Do we, how do we get more kids involved? So there's a lot to it. And to say, and this is not I'm getting out of answering the question. It's the fact that this is how the budget works. You just can't come in and say, well, oh, we're not going to do this or do that. We're going to cut our, there's no easy thing. We can buy diesel fuel from a different company and save 10 cents a gallon. No, it doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, our finance department does a great job at doing all that. And again, it comes down to weighing out all the options when it comes to budget season. We have to look at everything. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure for all of our candidates that, if you up in your view icon up in the upper right corner, if you click on gallery view, you should be able to see a screen with the question, while that you can, if you're down lower in the rotation, you can see the question as you're waiting for your turn to answer it. I'm happy to reread them for anybody as well. So Mrs. Philbeck.
Hi there. Okay, so what areas would I specifically recommend for budget cuts? What I would do is kind of in agreement with what Sally said, is we need to be talking to the teachers, not just the administrators, but create a climate in which teachers are comfortable coming forward, talking about the resources that they're able to use, the resources that they do use, the resources that they value, and not have it be afraid that they're going to get in trouble. My understanding is that things are improving on that level, that there is a liaison between the MEA and the board, and that the climate is changing in the district. But I think that that's one huge way, by increasing listening, that we can make some budget cuts based on what's at the fingertips, what's being used, and what is in the best interest of our students. On funding for academic and extracurricular activities versus athletic programs. So we've talked a lot about mental health, and mental health is tied directly to life outside of school, in addition to just what's happening in school. So we're talking about the whole child. And oftentimes when you have students that are struggling, sometimes they need to be engaged outside of the classroom. And through those academic, whether it is like an ASL team or a speech and debate team, or an athletic program or theater or marching band, those are all very valuable to the life of students. So some bring in money, some don't bring in money. Some are really attractive to, tournament play, which can bring in money, and some are not. So it doesn't always just come down to the money. Even though when we're talking about budgets, we end up talking about money. So I think that when we are looking at those programs, we need to collect data on them, and also talk with students and find out, what it is, what they find valuable about the activities in which they're engaged, and how it impacts them outside of school and in school. Because typically students that are doing really, really well are also heavily involved. And teaching on a college campus now, I teach freshmen, and part of my job is to, in the freshman English class, is to kind of teach them how to go to college. And the first thing we recommend is for them to be engaged. So it's not easy to say.
If I could, where you extended past your 2-minute
Okay,
time.
sorry.
Thank you. It's okay. Mr. Kabelka.
Thank you, Bonnie. Chris, you said we just can't change insurance companies. And the truth be told, we've never changed insurance companies for many years. We have a deal with Highmark, and then they call it a professional service. We have a deal with PNC Bank. It's called a professional service. We have a deal with the Knox Law Firm. It's called a professional service. So legally, they continue to do that. But when we're spending over $10 million in insurance, you could certainly bid it out and see what would be the best. When we're issuing bonds issues, it could be bid out. There's people that want to have this, but there are, some traditional deals that have been there that end up costing a lot of money. We're self-insured, and our cost of health insurance is through the roof. The more bodies we add, the more it goes up. I think we need to negotiate some of this as part of the fringe benefits, because what we've done in the past also is we've offered some early retirements to some of the teachers that have got 25, 30 years, because they're at the top of the scale. And when you bring in some young people, they're a little bit at the bottom of the scale. And teachers work hard. I think that they should be able to retire as soon as they can, once they've got their time in, because that's a tough job. It really is. But those are some of the places when you have the 90% that you say we can't, it's fixed. Well, it's fixed because of the deals that you negotiated, and I think we got to look at that stuff. I'm not for this professional services. I think anything of substance should go out to bid. And, as far as athletics, they are important. Our superintendent was an Olympian. It is very important, but people always feel that football gets the most. So I don't know if there's any to dial back from there, but athletics are important, and so are academics. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Mrs. Mattern?
Every time we talk it's budget time, it's always this word cuts comes up. And sometimes I wish we could change the narrative. Like, let's not talk about what needs cut. Let's talk about how we're going to raise some more money. So yes, you could raise taxes, but like Gary said, let's start building relationships with outside organizations. Let's start tapping into our Mill Creek Education Foundation grants. What can they find for us? Every child that takes part in an activity finds value in that activity. They want to be valued. A lot of times too, we forget there are mandates in place that we have to pay for. And there's 500 public school districts in the state of Pennsylvania, and you have all these state mandates that come down. But yet the cost of that particular state mandate, if we're just looking at one of them, is different for each school district on how it has to be handled. So like I know on the 10th, there was a bill that was given, Senate Bill 73. It's basically a mandate waiver, and it was actually drafted by the PSBA. I'm hoping that if it's passed, it's going to allow school districts to apply to Pennsylvania Department of Education for a waiver of many of the state imposed mandates. So I'm hoping we're watching that closely. Maybe we start having dialogue with our legislators going, look, you tell us we're this rich district, but come and look at our everyday operations and tell us, because I've been watching since 2012. Our school district does a very good job at grabbing that low-hanging fruit. We have no more low-hanging fruit left. Now we're talking something that's going to, be taken that touches a child direct service. And I was in the room when the ISAs were cut. When the Title I funds, we have to start looking outside the box. We've been pushed outside the box because it's either raise taxes or get rid of what kids needs. Well, our kids need and deserve to feel valued, and that means having good, curriculum, good extracurricular activities, and we have to figure out a way to pay for it. If that means, and again, I hate when it's pitted academic against athletics, because there's just as much value in being on speech and debate as there is being on the football team. None has any more value than the other. So I would like if we all work on ways of looking for outside funding, building relationships, and bringing in additional revenue.
Okay. We're going to move to a new question, and Mr. Padalon will be the first to answer. The question is, the school board just approved a one-year teacher contract in March. Explain your position on teacher demands for increases in salaries and benefits. Can you share your ideas on reducing the increasing amount of money needed for teacher pensions?
I think that when negotiating with unions, I think we should try and reach a compromise instead of, saying it's our way or the highway, or here you go. Like with any interviewer and any, any job any of us have ever had, there's always some discussion and compromise in terms of those types of benefits and compensation. So I just think that would be best, is really very open communication in terms of that.
Thank you. Mr. Winchell?
The 1-year deal was structured in a way that it gives us time to go forward. It made really no sense to negotiate a 4 or 5 year contract with so many unknowns going forward. It really didn't. The 1 year afforded us to really develop what virtual is going to look like. And so immediately after the settlement of that 1 year contract, subcommittees have been meeting on what virtual delivery instruction will be and what's that going to look like in a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year. So the 1 year deal was kind of a bridge till we got some more clarity around what the future may be. And as far as negotiations as far as salaries and the pension is really determined by the state. You got the pension board telling us what percentage that we need to contribute to that pension. When Governor Ridge was in, there's years we didn't. We pay for that later. So when you talk about a salary, add another 20 or 30%, as Mike said, to the fringe benefits. But the pension, now I will say the state has changed a few things on that pension. Last few years, instead of a defined benefit plan, which is contributed by the district and the employee with a defined benefit at retirement, it's a hybrid system now. Part of it's defined benefit, part of it's similar to a 401k in a private. Okay, they've also changed where many teachers are retired now, can take their lump sum of their contribution out to roll it over to an IRA. New teachers cannot do that. The system will keep that money. So they're trying to trim expenses or trying to maintain it. But what happened is last year, it came out a few weeks ago, Actuarial Board made a mistake 11 years ago. Now all these teachers have been hired in the last 11 years have to pay an extra % out of their pay each and every paycheck. Not much we can do with the pensions. Now, healthcare benefits, that's another issue. And that's always a topic of discussion each and every. But Mike, we did bid that out last time. We did have UPMC and Highmark battling it out. So we do take a look at that ongoing basis. Thank you.
Mr. Busco?
Yes, again, thank you. And yeah, the biggest thing when it comes down to teacher contracts is, and I think this last one was a very good effort on both halves. A good contract is when both parties walk away and nobody's joyful. It's a team effort. We win some, we lose some. Looking at it, as Gary mentioned, was to give us time. Nobody wants to negotiate a 4-year contract when we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. It doesn't make sense. And now we have the time to work on, what is our future look like in the term of virtual, in-person learning, all that stuff, engagement. I do want to just touch on one thing. Gary and I have stepped outside of the box and met with some of our local politicians and future politicians to talk about engagement on different levels, which helps with that, with a lot of things, because it also we talk about the pension problem. That is, again, our hands are pretty much tied. And as he pointed out, that just came out last week, that there was a problem in the way they figured the funding. And every year we just get the number and we have to pay it, unfortunately. But I think this 1-year contract was good for both parties, and it gave us time from a district standpoint and for the teachers to get a handle on everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Philbeck?
So the word that stands out to me in this question is the word demands. And I wonder if we change that word to like firefighters demanding for increases in salaries or police officers demanding increases in salaries, how that would be perceived out in the public. So teachers want to earn a living wage. I've never met a rich teacher that teaches and got rich from teaching. I do know a lot of teachers that are very, very savvy with their money, but I think they want a living wage. And so But I think there are also other ways to sweeten the deal in contracts, especially I'm going to talk about in the elementary school. And the elementary school teachers are doing recess duty every day. And when we talk about high school teachers and middle school teachers, they are teaching 5 or 6, 4 classes, block scheduling. I'm not exactly sure how many they're teaching a day, but in between those classes, they have room for a break to run to the restroom. Their students walk to the classes by themselves. In the elementary school, these teachers are with the children 100% of the time, unless they are at art, gym, or music 3 out of the 6 days, or they are at lunch, or at recess when they don't have duty. So I think there's a way, if you talk to elementary school teachers, most of them can tell you off the top of their head a good urologist, because they don't have time to go to the bathroom. They're with kids. They walk their kids to art, gym, and music. By the time they use the restroom, get their mail, get back to their classroom to answer email, it's time to turn around and go back and pick the kids up. It's part of the job. They love doing it. It's not necessarily a complaint, but there are ways to sweeten those contracts that don't necessarily demand for increases on the budget. It would take the use of aides, but so that's a point of negotiation.
Thank you. Mr. Kabelka?
Gary, I stand corrected then on the insurance. If you did bid that out, it wasn't bid out in the past when I was on. So I'm glad to hear that, because that is the best way you're going to get the best deal. I think that the way you reduce pensions is you reduce the salary. If a salary is 80,000, the pension is X amount percent. I think you got to have a bit of a cap on what the top end that somebody can make. And, right now, you get pretty high if you've been a teacher for a while, you're going to be in the $70,000 range. And that's probably because of steps. I don't have a problem with giving them the 2%, 2.5% raise. That's fine. But even like we pay an extra $2,000 to have a master's degree. Well, we can just say, look, we pay X amount. And if you don't have a master's degree, we're not even going to hire you, because there's so many teachers available in Erie County because of the colleges here and such. We can just raise our bar. Teachers work hard. And I agree with Janice is saying that the elementary teachers work harder than anybody because of what they're doing. So I appreciate what they're doing, but you got to negotiate down a bit, and you got to get some of a relief on insurance because of what they have to pay towards it. In the normal world, like where I'm at, I pay 25% of my premium. So if the premium's $1,000 a month, I pay $250. That's the normal. So those are places you can make some money. And if you just watch the steps a bit, the regular percentage raise is perfectly fine. But I understand everybody wants to make a living wage, but payroll is the biggest cost that we have.
Thank you. Mrs. Mattern?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. The school board just approved a 1-year teacher contract in March. Explain your position on teacher demands for increases in salaries and benefits. Can you share your ideas on reducing the increasing amount of money needed for teacher pensions?
Well, I think Gary and Chris touched on it. You really have no say over the pensions unless there's some type of pension reform that comes out. You're pretty much held to what you're told. I do agree. I think it was a good call to do a 1 year because we don't know what it looks like. With that said, I go back to what Janet said. Demand. I don't think any type of negotiations in any business, people come into the room with demands. I think everybody that knows when they're going to be in a discussion over a contract, that you're coming with something, you're willing to give, not demanding to take. I know that this year was difficult. I know there were times that students were sitting in a classroom without a teacher because teachers were out with COVID or contact trace, and we didn't have enough substitutes. They even raised the money to try and entice more substitutes. So I think if COVID proved anything, they're definitely worth more than what they think, than what we think that they're worth. I mean, they proved that. Negotiations are tough. Chris said it best. I mean, you're going to leave that room and everybody's going to be a little ticked off. But that's compromise. I mean, that's the key definition of compromise. Nobody leaves the table happy. But I definitely don't feel that our teachers have ever gone in and demanded anything. And I fruitfully hope that they feel valued moving forward in future negotiations.
Thank you. Mrs. Newsham?
Yes, I do think that it was very smart that the board did a one-year deal for this year. With everything else that was going on, not to have to worry about that is set. The pension is set. And I believe a lot of the problems with that came in years ago when there was money in there and they felt they didn't need to put more money in there. And I think that created a lot of problems. Everyone needs to feel appreciated and compensated. And I know after a year like we had this year, many of the parents were having difficulties, tremendous difficulties at home teaching 1 or 2 students. And imagine teaching 80 to 100 students in a day. I think there has to be compromise. I think both sides have to compromise. Perhaps looking at other sources, again, the state and the federal government fundings, I think are creating a lot of the problems. Maybe even looking at partnerships with businesses and seeing if anything can happen there. I know they just recently got an administrator retreat paid for mostly by services in our community, by different businesses. So thinking outside of the box seems to be a popular term, but I guess we need to look at other ways to do things. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes our budget-related questions. I appreciate all of you focusing on those. We definitely wanted to get those covered in our 2-hour span. We are going to have a fun little lightning round question now, starting with Mr. Winchell, and then we will move to some other focuses for the remainder of our questions. Mr. Winchell, starting with you, what would be the best single word to describe why you are the best candidate to be elected to the school board? Single word.
Experience.
Mr. Busco.
Yes, business experience.
That's 2 words.
Words, but sorry.
Mrs. Philbeck.
Collaborator.
Mr. Kabelka.
Watchdog.
Hyphenated. Mrs. Mattern.
Dedicated.
Mrs. Newsham. You're on mute.
Team player.
Come on. It's 2 words. Mr. Padalon.
21st century,
Oh, man.
hyphenated sometimes in some places.
All right. Thank you. New question, starting with Mr. Busco. Provide 3 brief goals that you have to promote academic excellence during your term if elected.
Okay. Well, the 3 goals that promote academic excellence. You know, bringing our superintendent, he's bringing everybody up to speed. So that's one goal. Okay. His hands-on leadership within his experience will bring everybody, I think will help motivate all the teachers, administration. You know, we also have our honors college, which is a great academic excellence promotion. And I think I also bring to the board, what else I'm going to bring to the board is our current board is made up of a great group of guys and ladies, and we all come together for the kids. We 100% come together for the kids, and we want to see every child succeed to the best of their ability. So I think those are the 3 things, 3 specific goals, you know, getting our superintendent to be able to do his magic that he has planned. And, you know, keeping the honors college going. And then again, the current board has a great mix of people, and what we look forward to is bringing all kids up. So thank you.
Mrs. Philbeck?
So three brief goals in no particular order. The first one would be professional development. I think the teachers need ongoing professional development in technology, English as a second language, and many other areas. Because when teachers are given time to learn and then given time to implement and then revisit those same learning goals in practice, it transfers directly to the students. The second one would be to have up-to-date resources throughout the district, especially in areas that may be untested. So in particular, social studies areas that teachers have resources to teach how the world works, how government works, and resources across the board. And then mental health. If our students are suffering, then they can't, they're less likely to succeed academically. So those would be my three.
Thank you. Mr. Kabilka?
Janice used one of mine as far as resources. The resources, I agree, for students and for the teachers. They need certain things to do their job. Individualism for the students, because not everybody's the same. We're not all one mold. You know, the certain clique kind of goes through, and then you always got a handful that kind of fall behind. And those are the ones that need the extra help. Not everybody's cut out for college. You know, and you got to help the individual, and that's part of the mental health thing. Just make them feel good about being there. That's very important. And then I'm trying to think what else. You know, you just want to make the kids feel engaged, not bullied, and not happy to be there. You got to kind of really give them the happiest area that you can be. And I know always students end up having one teacher that made a big difference for them. Pretty much everybody can say that. And if our teachers can be that one that makes the difference, you can literally save somebody's life, or you can mold it for the rest of their life. So, you know, whatever support they can provide. So.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Mattern?
Three brief goals of promoting academic excellence. First, I would start with professional development. Once we start giving trainings on, like Blandon mentioned, you know, ADHD, Asperger's, on the outside, these children sometimes look, you know, just like anyone else, but to live in their brain for a day is very, very difficult. And sometimes trying to explain that to an educator, and as a mom of one with ADHD, ODD, and anxiety, I can tell you it's very difficult to try to explain sometimes. So I think we do need a lot of professional development in different types of mental health and neurological disorders. Because once we start removing those barriers and understanding what that student's going through, they're going to latch on to want to learn and love learning. Going with the loving of learning, I think a brief goal in curriculum. I would really love that we start delving into our curriculum, using more innovative and modernized deliveries. We should be examining research and involving our stakeholders and talking to experts on how we can rejuvenate our curriculum and entice and excite our students again. I would love to see like a passion project at our middle schools where, you know, 1 hour, 1 day a week, where they're given basically a question and how to solve a problem, not something they could solve by Googling it, and having them do the research, and so that they feel that completion through the process, and how it works, and being able to see how does it connect to the outside world. I know when my kids were in middle school, the biggest thing was, why do I need to know this? How's it going to get me a job? How's it going to pay the bills? The third would be special education. We do a wonderful job at many levels on special education, but one thing I think I would like to see is a more collaborative effort to help parents understand the process of special education, help walk them through what a 504 meeting looks like, how to have feel they have some power in an IEP meeting and how mediation works and how they can request a mediation, educating parents on that whole process. So those would be my 3 brief goals, would be professional development, curriculum, and special education.
Thank you. Mrs. Newsham?
Yes, my first goal would be to continuously relook at curriculum, the order we're teaching things, looking at the scores when they come in and seeing where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and then focusing on our weaknesses. I know many years ago, our science scores were not good and we just couldn't understand why. Well, then come to find out that the order that we were teaching the 7th and 8th grade science was not correct. So we flip-flopped those, and then our scores ever since then have been really good. In math, the same type of a thing happened. We realized most of the things that we were teaching as far as for the tests ended up coming after the testing or right near the end of the school year. And so changing the order of things simply made a difference. So we always need to relook at our curriculum. Secondly, and I think this is a component that sometimes is missed, is we need to build rapport with our students. I think that is the single most important thing for having successful students. Taking the few minutes to talk with them, knowing that someone has a sick grandmother or someone's parents are talking about moving. And you learn that just by talking with the kids. When a kid feels comfortable, they want to learn and they'll do anything for you. And thirdly, I think just working with Dr. Roberts, I'm so impressed with what I've seen so far. He is amazing. And he is an expert, obviously, and working with him to continue to improve things in Mill Creek like they have the last year.
Thank you. Mr. Padalon?
Thank you. So my first issue would be for all ages K through 12 would absolutely be mental health awareness. I really believe that if I had not received a diagnosis and been given the help that I did, I would be in a vastly different situation than I am now. Statistically, most homelessness is caused by untreated mental health or mental disability issues. So it really is life-changing. It goes a very long way, and I think that's what absolutely is most important. In terms of middle school age children and up, I think in the 21st century, maybe we should open the classroom a little bit more, maybe in history class or social studies, you know how they call it a different name for whatever grade you're in, have more discussion about 21st century issues, you know, Black Lives Matters, diversity, both racial and ethnic, LGBTQ issues, and really learn, you know, different ways of thinking. Why are these people upset about this? And because I remember when I was a student not so long ago, talking about those things in a classroom setting, what we call politics and not polite to talk about at the table, was almost frowned upon in the classroom, in the formal academic setting. And high schoolers and onward, I think really should be focusing on careers. Over the past 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years, we've shifted as a society more from that, go to college, get it, to, well, if you want to go to college, that's really good. Is it something that is best for you, or is something in the trades, you know, really better for you? Even today, walking from my 3rd period block to the classroom, you hear teachers talking about taxes and you know, careers going into the future, and trade schools and all kinds of opportunities, not just shut up and get A's so you can go to college, which I think is a really, really good route for the district as it is, and something we need to build upon. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Winchell?
I think some priorities, you heard Dr. Roberts talk about it before, across all avenues and all levels of students, you're really challenging our students more, right? So over the past year, we've lost a little learning, little COVID slide. So how do we raise the bar? You know, how do we re-engineer that integrity? Mill Creek has been successful in spite of itself because status quo, this is how we've done things. It's time to raise the bar. The ESSER funds will allow us to do that, right? A differentiated approach in how we do things, especially virtual. So challenge our students too. Heard it before, professional development, right? So what kind of things do we need? What kind of things do teachers want? to help them be more successful in the classroom. I am the board liaison for the IU5. They have a library of 300 professional development videos and training. They're willing to come out and help. You know, I envision having a course catalog for each area of each department where an individual can have their course curriculum of what they need to do to become more proficient in their job, whether it's technology, whether it's interaction, or many other things. So the other part of professional development I think is overlooked is how about development for our students and families? You know, they were thrust into new technology and new software. And what help did they have besides the teacher delivering? So besides the professional development on the teacher side, let's develop some opportunities for our parents and families to also be developed. And the last thing is, you know, close to my heart is planning, strategic planning and goal setting. Even though Dr. Roberts has a strategic plan, and I mentioned before about the business office having a 5-year strategic plan, I really don't hear that from the other areas. It's all like the next school year, you know? So I challenge you, I'd like to have all the other areas think long-term and envision where they want to be with their respective teams 3 and 5 years from now, especially when we enter the virtual reality. So challenge your students, professional development, strategic planning, and goal setting. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have a new question now and start with Mrs. Philbeck. What can the district do to reduce the number of students who transfer to other high schools for academic or athletic programs? Mrs. Winchell?
That's for me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that one thing that we can do is offer choices. So like I said earlier, we're in this COVID time where we're using technology. I think that that can be used to offer opportunities for students that want to learn virtually. I would love to see Mill Creek continue to, in some way or another, continue virtual education for those students that want it and offer them a viable opportunity to be in the Mill Creek schools instead of going out to PA Cyber School or any other any other cyber school. I'm a curious individual. Several years ago, I went to the open house at PA Cyber, and I was quite unimpressed with what I saw at the open house. I do think that with that would come some accountability on the part of the teachers. I know in PA Cyber School, the teachers are required to report to a brick and mortar school building in order to teach. The students are not, but the teachers are. So I think that if we had some structure put in place, and I'm not talking next year, I'm just saying, you know, for a long-term plan, just like Gary was saying, a strategic plan going forward, I think offering some of those opportunities, I think the Honors College is a good program. And I think that if we would look at other tracks of programs that we could develop within the school district to put students in those, that they could develop areas of interest and skills and take them less out of the school.
Thank you. Mr. Kobelka?
Well, I guess in order to reduce the number of kids that are leaving, you've got to offer a competitive program. You know, if you have football or basketball or whatever that is competitive, they're going to want to stay. If your team is not very good and they get an opportunity to go to a Catholic school or something, they're going to jump over. And I don't know, you know, how you can really. It's tough to compete with a parochial school. You know, they can pretty much pick and choose whoever they want. That's a tough one. But I know that, you know, generally in basketball, football, McDowell is quite competitive. On the learning side, not Cathedral, but the school here in Erie, the Collegiate, has been the only school in the area that's ranked in the top 10 ever in this Erie area. And they've been number 1, number 3. Their model has changed a bit now that the city only has 2 high schools, so they've had to put different kids in there. But if we do have some of the specialized programs, which we do have to achieve, then hopefully we could compete. You know, Collegiate's quite a good school. And if we're able to give them the same type of programs, then we could possibly hold on to them. And if we're not, then what's the saying is, you know, if you love a bird or whatever, let it fly free. If they can get something better at somewhere else, then they got to do what's right for them.
Thank you. Mrs. Mattern?
The first step I would take is to reach out to those that left this year. Ask them, why did you leave? What was it that you didn't want to remain in our Mill Creek schools? There is no harm in surveying people that have left. They do exit surveys at businesses all the time when people leave to go to other businesses. I think we should possibly start an exit survey. I think from that, you formulate some data. I know in years past, we would send out surveys to the 8th graders. You're not going to get past lineage. I mean, if your mom went to Villa and graduated from Villa, and so they want to send you to Villa, that's very hard to compete with. Mike makes a valid point. We do lose some students due to athletics. So how do you build a program where they would want to remain a Trojan? I think it's all just dialogue. It's relationship building on asking the question on, why did you choose to leave? Give us some feedback on what could be changed that might have possibly made you stay, but it all goes to dialogue and relationships.
Thank you. Mrs. Newsham?
Yes, I agree with Janine that exit surveys for the kids who do leave would be a great idea. I also think exit surveys for our seniors. What did we not offer that you would have liked? What could have made things better? I don't know that we do a good enough job marketing our schools and what we have. I think that the move up days need to happen earlier in the year. I think a lot of kids are already making their decisions before we have our move up days for the kids so they can see what it's all about. Another possibility is using the students to spread the word. Why is our school so good? Why should you come to McDowell? Having 8th or 9th graders come down to the 8th grade. Actually 9th through 11th or 12th graders come down to the middle schools, talk to the kids about why they think McDowell is so fabulous. So I think we just need to do a better job marketing. And when we have that open house, it needs to be amazing to make everyone want to come there.
Thank you. Mr. Padalon?
Thanks. So to build upon what Mike said in terms of what other academically is offered, I did go to collegiate my 9th and 10th year, and I do know for a fact that once you're in your junior or senior year, you are offered a dual enrollment opportunity, period. To all students at collegiate are offered that opportunity. And I think there's like a 3.0 GPA requirement, which is nothing for students there. So for all intents and purposes, it is universally offered to students who want it. I feel as though something in Mill Creek, it's treated as the gifted of gifted. Only the best of the best really should be going and looking at that dual enrollment. And I think we could really open that up a lot, because if students can go, just like with what Ms. Newsham said about being able to do open houses that are just spectacular, students really should be able to sit down in a college class and decide if that environment and that type of learning is right for them, because a lot of young people feel encouraged to go to college, but they know nothing about it, nothing like what it's about. So I really think that's something that would be really important, and pushing more for not only openness for that, but also encouraging dual enrollment over the AP exam, because quite frankly, the AP exam credits are not offered at as many colleges as I think that dual enrollment credits are. Also, in terms of that athletic program transfers, it's just a really hard thing to understand. I do know that McDowell does compete very well with other school districts. A family member of mine was considering leaving her parochial school for Mill Creek, but it's just really hard when these Catholic schools are more emphasized on sports, and maybe that's just the family's background. They're sports people. So.
Thank you. And Mr. Busco?
Nope,
Yes. Now, as Janine mentioned.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I skipped Mr. Winchell. Then we'll get to you, Chris.
Well, I think getting back to what Janine said, the first question is why? Try to get an understanding of why. Is it sized? Help them understand the options they have here. The school within a school concept of the Honors College or the career pathways, and so why? Exit strategy is a great idea. I know Dr. Roberts is a data-driven guy. That's one of his top agenda items to see why this is happening. We need to promote open houses. I've had the experience where you go to the open house and it's like, people are not there selling the concept, selling the district, making it exciting, wanting people to come and to stay. So I think that has an opportunity too. Early in my career, a mentor of mine once said, there's no better salesman of yourself than yourself. And we need to raise the bar, and make this as a top opportunity. As far as the athletics, it's a matter of community. I know everybody that's been involved with athletics, it's being part of a team. So a lot of people like to go to the smaller schools so they can participate and be engaged with that. Other ones like being in a bigger environment. So it's basically being a part and what's a good fit. You're never going to stop the legacy, kids going to prep or to Villers and prep. Now, I guess it's all the same, but you're never going to stop those legacy things. But I think it's just a matter of communication, promoting what we have to offer. And again, I think we have some of the best kept secrets around, and size is not necessarily a bad thing. It can offer a lot more when you think about all the things that we can offer in our high school and our schools that the parochial schools and the private schools can't offer. So again, we need to market it, we need to promote it, and we need to be proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Busco.
Yes, thank you. And again, as Janine said, and Gary has mentioned, legacies you will never change. And that's fine. That's 100% fine. As far as sports, it's very similar there. But again, they play at different levels. And also, we have to promote what we have. As Gary mentioned, we have the Honors College, which is awesome. And then you go to the, what I call the fine arts, the theater. Another school, 2 schools copied that. We had that first. So we do a lot of work, and then it is copied because people like it. And so that's a big thing is going forward. And as Gary mentioned also, Dr. Roberts is a data-driven individual. He is about looking at everything, finding out what's working and moving on. Bringing back the kids, because our education level, what we offer is much better than some of the public. And again, private versus public, it's just a different animal. And some people want that. And it is a network. But at the same time, when you leave Erie, you make your new network. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that in the interest of time, because I want you all to have a minute for your closing statement, but I'd like to ask one more question, but we're going to run it for only for 1 minute for an answer. And let me see who I'm starting with for that one. I'm jumping around now. I'll probably mess this up. We're going to start with Mr. Kabilka, and hopefully Tom here at CAM will stay with me. We're going to jump ahead to question number 10. What is your position on charter schools, especially in terms of the benchmarks they should have to meet? For example, should their students' standardized test scores be at least better than the test scores for comparable students in the Mill Creek Township School District? And we're going to do this for a single minute answer only, for starting with Mr. Kabilka.
Got to say that my opinion of charter schools is that they compete with public schools, and that's what Mill Creek is, a public school, and our taxes end up going to finance those charter schools, and I don't think that's fair. I think a parochial school runs on its own. You pay a tuition, you're in. A charter school takes away public money. So I'm against charter schools. They should have to be held to the same standards that we do in Mill Creek as far as, test results and such. And I think they're basically for profit, a lot of them. And I don't agree with it. I think if you want to be a private school and not get public funding, knock yourself out. But if you want to compete, by using the tax dollars, I'm not a fan of that. I really am not.
Thank you. Mrs. Mattern?
Reform. There's got to be charter school reform. It's unfair that they do not have to prove where the money's going. They could take special education money and buy curtains for the classroom. They do not have to prove that a cent of that special education money is spent on a special education child. It needs reformed.
Thank you. Mrs. Newsham.
Absolutely, they should have to test and they should have to maintain certain standards. That's just crazy. That I'm not even sure. I thought that they didn't have to do state testing, but I could be wrong about that. So yeah, absolutely. If they are able to have our students go and we have to supply the funding, they should be able to prove that they're doing just as good, if not a better job than we are. And I sincerely would doubt that.
Thank you. Mr. Patalon.
So just in line with everybody saying, I have to agree with all of them. Taxpayer dollars and Mill Creek money should not be put into charter schools, in my opinion. Speaking from experience, you know, both of my parents are extremely academic. My father's a college professor and my mother has, you know, degrees out the wazoo. In our experience, having both done public and private schools, public schools tend to have a higher standard and a more rigorous and honest curriculum than private schools and charter schools do at the elementary, middle school, high school, and collegiate level. So to I guess go a step ahead of behind of the question, I don't think our taxpayer dollars should be put towards charter schools anyway, because if they essentially operate as a private school, be a private school.
Thank you. Mr. Winchell.
Well, I'm not going to jump off the wagon on this one because I totally agree. You know, they definitely need to adhere to the same standards as Mike said. You know, if it's a cyber school, they provide a laptop and that's about it as far as their expenses. You know, like I said before, we pay $3.7 million a year. You know, if we can get 50 of those kids back, that could be up to $1 million back for our budget. I do know, you know, recently talking, Kurt Sonny is education. There is charter reform, whereas if a school district offers a virtual delivery, a cyber option, and if a parent decides to not send it to the district cyber option, but decides to send it to like the PA Cyber, then they will be responsible for that payment to that cyber, not the school district. So Governor Wolf is behind that. That's going to continue to be pushed through. But that's why it's important for us to get our virtual delivery model up and running. So again, on its own, if we can attract kids back from the cyber schools. I know we're already anticipating 20 in next year's budget for cost savings there. Thanks.
Mr. Bosco.
Yes, again, you know, they do take way too much money from us, and you know, they should maintain the same standards as we have to. It's only fair. And as Gary pointed out, we will be trying to win these kids back because it is a big savings. Until this reform goes through, that's what we're dealing with. So again, they should be held to the higher standard, a standard equal to ours. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Philbeck.
Yes, they should be held to the same standard or higher. And it's all the more reason one size does not fit all. So it's all like, I think I would be very excited to see Mill Creek adopt some new programs. And I would be very excited to see Mill Creek create its own cyber school, because I know the strength of the teachers in the Mill Creek school system. And I know that they would just provide an A+ world-class education.
Thank you. That will conclude, in the interest of time, our questions, and I will now move to each candidate. We'll have a 1-minute closing statement, and we will start with Mrs. Mattern.
Well, again, thank you for holding this. There aren't many times that we can speak with the public or answer questions, so it's very difficult to reach our voters. We have an amazing district. I see it. I talk to students about it. I highlight it consistently on We Are Mill Creek. We can start to raise the bar by having comfortable and uncomfortable conversations about where our deficits are. Every district has them. I think it's wonderful to see, even during COVID, how much energy our staff puts in every day to give our kids the best educational experience out there. And education's moving at a really rapid rate. We need to stay abreast of educational trends, because our students deserve access to innovative course offerings. And I want a seat at the table to help look for ways to make that happen. So I hope after listening to me tonight that you will vote Mattern on May 18th. And thank you again for tuning in tonight, everybody, and Bonnie and the PTA and the League of Women's Voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Newsham?
Yeah, thank you to the PTA for hosting this and for everyone who tuned in. I'm really excited about the possibility of serving Mill Creek in a different capacity. If elected, I bring 39 years of educational experience to the board. I have special ed background. I wrote IEPs, I conducted IEP meetings, and I carried out IEPs. And I think that's a big part of the district is the special ed population. I know the history of Mill Creek. I know where we've been, and I also know where we are now. And I'd like to be a part of where we're going. With me, what you see is what you get. I'm open, I'm honest, I don't have any hidden agendas. And I'm also has spent all of my years in Mill Creek working as part of a team to get things accomplished. So I'd like to be a part of the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Padalon?
I think that we are at a new dawn in our country in terms of the way we speak about things that were taboo in the past, social issues, LGBT, Black Lives Matters, mental health. I think that in a classroom is what is going to be the most important going forward, especially coming from somebody who has been a student in the modern era recently, because, you know, I with utmost respect to everybody, it's a really experience is really, really good, but you know, not everybody is fresh out of a classroom and knows what it's like to be a student. And I just want to thank the faculty members and administration who have thanked me for running and said that they appreciate the fact that somebody so young is running. I really appreciate that. And thanks again to Bonnie for the invitation and for being so accommodating. Thanks, everybody. I really enjoyed today.
Thank you. Mr. Winchell?
Yeah, Blaine, congratulations on running. I give you credit for trying to make a difference. That's awesome. Thanks, Bonnie, for the time and everyone tuning in tonight. You know, it's a pivotal time for the school district. There'll be 3 to 5 new members for the board, and the composition of that board going forward will be critical. Experience will be more important than ever. This past year, serving on the board in the past 6 months as president of the board has been challenging yet rewarding. I'm an experienced, dedicated, and driven collaborator that can help lead the board the next 4 years, which will be critical years for what the school district will become. What I have is the ability to work together towards a common goal, dedicated, focused, and adaptable to change. What I don't have are any preconceived notions, agendas, attitudes, or an ego. I will continue to listen and work with all stakeholders, administrators, educators, students, parents, taxpayers, while maintaining to be fiscally conservative yet socially responsible. I would appreciate your votes for both the 2-year and 4-year seats on or before May the 18th. Thank you.
Mr. Busco?
Yes, again, I'd like to thank you and everybody involved in this. It is good to see, and it should be done more often. But I'd like to thank also all the residents who are watching and will be watching. And a big thanks goes out to John DePlacido for all his years of service and Lisa Capobianco on the board.
Yeah.
They have added a great, they've added great content to our board and will be sorely missed. What the board needs now is consistency, more than ever. We just hired the new superintendent. We need to filter his goals down to everyone. And so with the consistency is what we're looking for. We do not want to have people on the board that are agenda driven or have other issues that they want to bring forward. We're about collaboration, working together for the children, for the teachers, and for the taxpayers. So please, when you go to vote, Busco, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Philbeck.
So thank you, Bonnie, and the Erie County Council, PTA, the League of Women Voters, Cam Erie, and for everyone for being here. I am the candidate that brings the heart of a teacher, the mind of a lifelong learner, and the spirit of an individual that wants to see Mill Creek Township School District not just survive, but thrive in, as we learn to live in this COVID world. We're in the midst of a transformational era in which we have the opportunity to strengthen our district. As an educator, given my firsthand classroom teaching experience, my perspective will speak for students, teachers, and families. And you can learn more about me at facebook.com/elect Janice Philbeck. I will be on the ballot 2 times, once for a 4-year seat, once for a 2-year seat. If you're so inclined, you can vote for me 2 times. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Kabelka?
There we go. Gary, you had mentioned there'll be 3 to 5 new members, and then Janice just mentioned about the 2-year. What I'd like to ask is the majority of us have cross-filed Republican, Democrat, and we've also filed for the 2- and 4-year. In the sake of fairness, we've got candidates here. I will say that if I win a 2-year and a 4-year, I'll give up the 2-year and let the next person in line that got the next amount of votes get that. And that can be arranged through, when you withdraw. If you withdraw before the end of August, they can put a person in there. What happens is you keep the seat, and then you get appointed in December, and then you pick somebody which will not be one of the people that are here. And that's unfortunate. I think that, that the next person in line, there should be 5 seats that are gone for. And if anybody wins both the 2-year and the 4-year, they should give it up to the next person that gets the next amount of votes. I think that would be the fairest, and I pledge to do that, and I hope the rest of you would do that. And remember me, Mike Kabelka, on May 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the candidates for their participation and great answers. The League of Women Voters for co-sponsoring this forum with us, and the folks here at Cam Erie who have been just wonderful to work with. I should have learned last night before everybody started diving off before the closing comments, but if you'd look in your chat box right now, see, here's my level of technology, because I put the CAM's website, the Erie County Council -PTA Facebook page, and then also the League of Women Voters. See, what you do is you get your phones out now and you take a picture of that before it goes away, which is what you do in Bonnie Fagan world. But as soon as Cam has the recording available to us, we will be sharing it in all these places. So we had a good turnout tonight, and we're hoping, and you all can share it on your social media pages and make sure as many people as possible know about the recording that will be available for people to view between now and the primary on May 18th. Thank you all very much for attending, and this concludes our forum.